Hi, and welcome back. This video will cover the product backlog refinement as part of our Scrum events series. Technically, the product backlog refinement is an activity. We will still cover it as an event, therefore as part of this module. The objective of the product backlog refinement is to create a ready product backlog for our next sprint planning. This means that a product owner and the developers get together and work through the product backlog one by one. Sometimes it is recommended to also include some of your key stakeholders, as they might provide really important input. As a Scrum Master, you can facilitate that event. The Scrum Guide recommends the developers to block out 10% of their capacity for product backlog refinement activities. It specifically talks about developers because a product owner is basically doing refinement all the time. Every time a product owner meets with stakeholders and includes new product backlog items to the product backlog, prioritizes them, adds a bit more detail, that's basically also product backlog refinement. So a product owner does refinement all the time, but the developers need to dedicate about 10% of their capacity to this kind of activity. As preparation for the product backlog refinement, I highly recommend every product owner to go through that product backlog and prioritize it from a customer perspective. Also, I would recommend to developers to take a look at that product backlog and get a sense of whether there are technical dependencies between those items, so that they are well prepared for the activity itself. The refinement itself is usually conducted in various steps. The first step is to challenge the priority. Does the current order of items work, or are we not accounting for technical dependencies? If not, how can we reprioritize the product backlog so that it makes sense in terms of value delivery towards our customers, but also covering or accounting for all the dependencies that exist between the individual items? The second step is to look at the highest priority item and ask ourselves, is that item ready? And if we do have a definition of ready, we can actually go through that checklist. Is it small enough? Does it have acceptance criteria? Have we sketched out a few things and created a shared understanding? If that's the case, we can also go and estimate that item. In the third step, we would look at how many items or how many points worth of items have we already refined. If that goes beyond our existing velocity, or maybe 2x of that velocity if we're planning 2 sprints ahead, then we can stop refinement right here, right now. Because our objective is to do product backlog refinement just in time and just enough. After the actual refinement that we do together collaboratively as a team, there might be some follow-up work. As a product owner, you might have to go and speak to your customers, to your stakeholders, to get a better understanding around a question which you could not answer to your developers. As developers, you might have to do some technical research as a follow-up work. We refer to this technical research as spikes. One example is researching the API of Stripe or PayPal if you want to include a new payment system. Finally, let's talk about a few challenges that frequently happen with regards to product backlog refinement. The biggest challenge that I see is that teams skip product backlog refinement because they believe sprint planning would be enough to do all of these things. Or if there's not enough time between product backlog refinement and sprint planning to do all the follow-up work. Another challenge that I frequently observe is that the product owner does the refinement just by themselves, or maybe with 1 or 2 lead developers. That, of course, does not result in a shared understanding, and in many cases, all of the things that we would discuss collaboratively during refinement have to be repeated in the next sprint planning. So based on all the teams that I've worked with, the approach that I laid out, starting out with the goal, the participants, the time box, the input, the conduction of the event itself, and the follow-up work, is something that I believe is not only realistic, but also super valuable for teams to do. I hope this video helped you get a much better understanding of product backlog refinement as an activity, which of course can also be done as an event, and I'll see you in our next video.